Welcome to The Explainer. So, back in 2018, the world was absolutely glued to the news about a former Russian spy and his daughter poisoned in Salisbury, England. But what you might not remember is that there was another victim, an innocent woman whose death revealed the true, indiscriminate horror of the attack. This is the story of Dawn Sturgess. She was a 44-year-old mother of three, and her family, they don't remember her for the tragedy that ended her life. They remember the person she was, a wonderful, kind woman who had this incredibly close bond with her youngest daughter. Her collapse? It was sudden and it was catastrophic. When paramedics got there, she was in cardiac arrest, and despite everything they tried, the damage was just irreversible. The cause? It was completely unthinkable. A chemical weapon. So how on earth did a chemical weapon, something meant for a targeted hit, end up in the hands of an ordinary citizen? That question sparked a massive public inquiry. Today, we're going to distill its huge 600-page report to find you the answer. Okay, let's dive right in.
First things first, to really understand what happened to Dawn, we have to understand the weapon itself.
The weapon was Novichok. It actually means newcomer in Russian. Now, this is a class of nerve agent that was secretly developed by the Soviet Union for one single purpose: to be unbelievably deadly by attacking the nervous system. And the crucial part? There is no certain antidote. To put its power into perspective for you, the official inquiry report makes this absolutely chilling comparison. A lethal dose of an older nerve agent, VX, is equivalent to just 8 grains of sand on the skin. That's it. And Novichoks, they're in that exact same category of extreme toxicity. And this really illustrates the terrifying deception at the heart of this case. The inquiry confirmed the Novichok was of a very high purity, and it was hidden inside a professionally counterfeited perfume bottle. So you have a deadly weapon made to look like a totally harmless, everyday object? So how did this bottle get from a state-sponsored assassination all the way to Dawn Sturgess? Well, to answer that, we've got to rewind about 4 months. This timeline is absolutely crucial. You can see 2 totally separate events, months and miles apart. You've got the Skripal poisoning in March, and then Dawn's collapse at the end of June. The inquiry's main job was to prove that these 2 events weren't just a coincidence, but were actually part of the exact same criminal act. The investigation pretty quickly zeroed in on these 3 men. The inquiry identified them as agents of Russia's GRU military intelligence. And get this, they traveled on passports that were issued in quick succession with sequential numbers. That's a huge red flag for intelligence agencies. Let's take a look at how their whole story just unraveled. The inquiry found these glaring, almost comical errors in their cover identities. For example, on 2 separate UK visa applications, the guy calling himself Alexander Petrov couldn't keep his story straight. He not only changed his father's first name, he also literally swapped his parents' birthplaces. I mean, these are just sloppy, unbelievable mistakes for any supposed civilian traveler. And their attempt to explain why they were in Salisbury was even more damning. They claimed they were just tourists, eager to see the famous spire at the cathedral. But the inquiry looked at their movements, which showed them heading in the complete opposite direction of the cathedral, right towards Sergei Skripal's house. The whole story was dismissed as not just false, but completely absurd. So, after smearing Novichok on the Skripal's front door, the agents had a problem. What do you do with the weapon you just used? Their decision, as it turns out, would set in motion a truly tragic chain of events. This right here outlines the heartbreaking, totally random chain of events. The inquiry concluded that Dawn's partner, Charlie Rowley, probably found the discarded perfume box while he was out scavenging not long after the March attack. He had no idea what was inside. So months later, on June 30th, he gave the unopened box to Dawn as a gift. Thinking it was real perfume, she sprayed it on her wrists and collapsed within minutes. So after looking at all the evidence, and that includes some highly sensitive intelligence in closed-door private sessions, the inquiry came back with a completely unambiguous verdict. The report establishes a direct, unbroken line. It concludes that the actions of those Russian agents on March 4th were the direct cause of Dawn Sturgess' death 4 months later. Her death wasn't some separate, tragic incident. It was the final, awful outcome of that initial attack. And the chairman's conclusion leaves zero room for doubt. The report says that making a Novichok of such high purity Well, that requires a sophisticated state laboratory. The whole operation had all the hallmarks of a state intelligence service. He was, and I'm quoting him here, sure that Russia was responsible. But there was still one really painful question that remained for Dawn's family, and really for the public. Could her death have been prevented? This slide shows the impossible choice the authorities were facing. See, after the Skripal attack, they didn't know where the Novichok applicator was. To cover all the bases, they would have had to issue a general warning, like, don't pick up strange items. But think about the implication of that a chemical weapon could be lying anywhere, in Salisbury, maybe even London, where the attackers had been. It risked causing just massive, uncontrollable panic. Looking back, it's so easy to say a warning should have been put out. But the inquiry judged the decision based on the information they had at the time. The probability of an ordinary member of the public just happening to find the discarded weapon was seen as extremely low. So the decision not to risk mass panic, it was ultimately found to be a reasonable one. In the end, the tragic death of Dawn Sturgess leaves all of us with this haunting question. It really highlights the terrifying new challenges of modern, state-sponsored attacks on foreign soil. What you should really take away from this is how a targeted geopolitical act can have these devastating, random, and deeply human consequences, forever changing the life of a family who simply knew a kind, funny, and selfless woman named Dawn.